why did you get divorced?
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't you ever married?
Mm-hmm.
A widow or a widower, are you really open to loving again? Did you
Mm-hmm.
love your spouse? Did you have a good marriage?
Thank you so much for tuning back into Second Act TV. I want to welcome Sandy Weiner back to Second Act, the dating coach and communications expert. Sandy, thanks so much for joining me again.
Thanks for having me back.
Today, an important conversation that a lot of us maybe don't think about. You know, we talk a lot about how to online date or how to do this, how to do that. But when you actually get out there, especially after, at our age, like after a long-term marriage, you haven't been on the dating scene in a long time, there's stuff that comes up that you may not be expecting, such as questions that you're going to get on the first date or early on in the dating process that you don't, might surprise you, that you don't really know how to handle about your past, about past romances, past dating, your relationship history. So I want to talk about that today, is how to handle tough questions, uncomfortable questions, and then maybe how to, get past that and reframe your story. So Sandy, let's talk about that.
Yeah, if we're not prepared to answer these questions, we either get annoyed, we might shut somebody down and say, that's rude, don't ask me that question, or we might tell too much. And I believe in boundaries. When you are answering questions, you answer them with boundaries. And people don't deserve your entire life history. They have to earn your trust and earn your stories. That's a really important principle. So that goes for any question anybody asks you. If you're not comfortable, share only what you're comfortable with. And the more you can prepare the answers in advance, the better you'll be at not being the deer in the headlights. Oh my God, I can't believe they asked me that.
Yeah. Well, let's give them some examples of some that you just need to expect, such as, if you're divorced, right? What are some of the typical ones that people, like what you hear in your practice? What do women and men struggle with the most?
Yeah. Why did you get divorced?
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't you ever married?
Mm-hmm.
A widow or a widower, are you really open to loving again? Did you love your spouse? Did you have a good marriage? Those are some of the hard questions.
Yeah.
Why are you still single? Then there are some annoying questions like, how's online dating going? What are you looking for on here? How long have you been single? What's a lovely person like you doing being single? So these are all questions, and it's that whole variety of whether they're just annoying or they're asking questions that you don't want to say is too much too soon. So let me just kind of break down the way we answer all of these questions, and then we'll go through the individual ones. Okay. We want to reveal our life in layers. So you're like an onion. The first layer is the basic. This is what happened. Here's where I am today, and here's what I want in the future. So here's what happened. I was in several long-term relationships. None of them led to marriage. Here's where I am today. I am dating online so I can find a great person, and I'm really looking forward to a life partner. Right? That's it.
Right.
Now, if they got to know you better, you could share, I had some attachment issues and I had to go to therapy, and I really grew up in a very dysfunctional home. This is not a conversation you have with somebody that you're just starting to date.
Right.
This is something that comes out much later on. Then let's say you're dating somebody for a few weeks and you want to say, well, I had an 18-year relationship with somebody, and unfortunately he was not ready to commit, and I wanted more. Or maybe I was taking care of my parents for a lot of their illnesses, and marriage just wasn't a possibility for me. Or, you know what, I saw a lot of bad marriages and I really didn't, that wasn't something I wanted for myself.
Right.
That's all fine. But, the way you share and how you share are going to be really important. That's the, never married. Then we have, why did you get divorced? So one way to answer that is very simply, we really wanted it to work.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we drifted apart. And now I'm really looking forward to finding my
Yeah.
next love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simple, same
Mm-hmm.
formula, right? Didn't work out. We don't need to know why. Who cares what that person
Right.
did to you at this point? Then, as you get to know them better, yeah, there was infidelity. And now
Mm-hmm.
I learned what my contribution was. The one thing I've heard from a behavioral scientist who was on my podcast, and she said one way to ask this question about divorce or any relationship ending, and just to kind of see if somebody is relationship ready, because this is really what everybody wants to know with all these questions, they're
Mm-hmm.
just asking them in an awkward way, is to say, if your ex was with us here now,
Uh,
what would they say is the
yeah.
reason that the relationship ended? And would you agree with them?
That's a great question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is from Duana Welch. She wrote a book called Love Factually. It's all a science-based love, uh, just kind of all about different parts of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked that question once on a date, and the guy said, "Oh, she would say I was lazy, and I would agree with her." I'm like, "Okay, thanks for being honest." But again, if you're asking these
Yeah.
questions, be prepared with your answers.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a widow or a widower, are you really open to love again?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm hoping to meet somebody great. I lost my spouse. It was painful. I have done a lot of grieving, and you can even mention with support. Don't be afraid to say you've had therapy. I think it's a really attractive thing if somebody says it. I dated a widower a little while ago, and I said to him, "What are you doing to support yourself?" I wanted to know that I wasn't going to
Mm-hmm.
be his caretaker. I
Yeah.
wanted to know that he actually is in process. And so that's one way to ask without being too
Mm-hmm.
nosy.
Yeah.
It's just, what are you doing to support yourself? This must be really hard.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm seeing a therapist.
Yeah.
Great. That's
Yeah.
great. I go to
Yeah.
a grief support group.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. I don't need
And
to
that's
know the
something, but that's something, especially at our age, that's coming up more and more and more and more. Widows and widowers. We have a whole playlist on that, how to, start over again after the loss of a spouse. And the question of, are you ready? I mean, that's almost rude to ask that, I think. Yes, you want to know that, but you find that out differently than just coming right out with it and expect somebody to defend themselves of why they're here on a date with you.
Right, so you don't act defensive because
Right.
people are going to ask you rude questions. They
Yep.
they don't necessarily mean for them to be rude.
Right.
They're looking for information to see if you are a viable partner. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether they want to know why you never got married because maybe you're incapable of having a long-term relationship,
Mm-hmm.
the information you share with them is about your long-term relationships. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody is divorced, you want to know, are you broken? Are you so dysfunctional that I'm not going to be able to have a relationship with you? Or
Right.
have you made peace with your past? Are you open to loving again? Have you done any work on yourself? Like, I want to know, has somebody taken responsibility for their
Mm-hmm.
share, no matter how dysfunctional, whatever relationship you've been in,
Right.
whether it's grieving, whether it's doing therapy or coaching or whatever it is, that if you stayed with an abuser for 30 years, you played a part in that. And
Mm-hmm.
you hopefully have learned why you played that part so you don't repeat it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not to blame or to shame anybody, but to
Right.
say, you know what, I am responsible for what
Mm-hmm.
I did and I want to do better. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the future layers of what happened in my life, I can
Mm-hmm.
share with you the work I've done. And
Yeah.
what about you, the work you've done? And now we can have a mature relationship because we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about being open to discussing hard things.
Yeah, that's such another great, great point. That again, it maybe is more relevant, if you will, for our age group because so much has happened. We have so much baggage or experience we bring to the table. Is the ability or wanting or to take responsibility, because to me that's always a big red flag when somebody blames everything else. Everything is outward and never inward. A big,
Yeah.
big big turn off. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't want to hear, well, I do want to hear, I want to hear the truth. I want to
Yes.
hear what's really going on for you so I can make a choice that's
Mm-hmm.
an informed choice about who you are today.
Right.
Doesn't matter who you were, it matters who you are, what you've
Mm-hmm.
become through
Mm-hmm.
crisis, through loss, through whatever you've
Yeah.
gone through. Where are you now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, and then doesn't that bring us to your second point, Sandy, is how do you reframe what happened to you? How do you reframe your story? Not, coming up with something new or lying about it, but positioning it in a way that is palatable for both of you.
Yeah, so you don't lie about how hard it was for something that you've gone through, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's, let's say, loss.
Mm-hmm.
So one way to talk about it is, my spouse was ill for 7 years, and God, the end was so horrible. She completely became a different person,
Mm-hmm.
and her brain went, and it was horrible, and all the self-care and the caretaking, and
Yeah.
you don't share that level. So you reframe it as, I love my wife so much that I wanted to be there for her through illness,
Mm-hmm.
through all the different things that we went through. And I wouldn't change it for anything. And, I'm grieving the loss, and my heart is open to a new person. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not telling a lie, but you're telling, like, here's a little bit about what I went through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard, and this is what I learned. And so it's really the learning and the growth that you want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I learned about myself. Here's what I'm looking forward to in the next relationship. These
Mm-hmm.
are all ways that we reframe. I used to talk a lot about my marriage and all the things that went wrong in the beginning because
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't yet healed. So
Yeah.
I'd be on a date and I'd be like, I was so tough. I did all these things, and it's just like, not really the healthiest thing to share.
Mm-hmm.
So today I wouldn't share any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, my ex and I get along better than ever. And it's focus on what's good. Focus
Mm-hmm.
on the learning. Focus on where are you now.
Yeah.
So I would say, we had a tough marriage. Now we're able to talk about the kids. We're able to be at peace.
Mm-hmm.
I really value that. In fact, just today, I found out that my ex-husband put me on a membership for the aquarium so I could take my grandchildren.
Oh.
Right? Isn't that nice? So I can
Yeah.
appreciate what's good instead of focus on what wasn't good and how much I
Mm-hmm.
suffered. So that's the reframe. It's, yes,
Yeah.
I went through a hard time. And what was important to me was doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
What was important to me with my children was making sure they were in a good place before I started dating. So when people
Mm-hmm.
say, how long after your marriage ended did you date? You can say it in a way like, oh my God, I was shell shocked and I just hated men. And, that's one way to approach it. And that's one story. The other story is I prioritized the mental health of my children and made sure that they were in a good place
Yeah.
before I put them through me going through the whole
Yeah.
dating process because I knew that would take an emotional toll on them. Now,
Right.
that says something about me as a person, as opposed to I just wanted to get out there and have as much sex as I could because to get back at my ex, like we,
Yeah.
we all have stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you go down such a slippery slope, especially with divorce, because divorce comes with, I mean, let's face it, you broke up for a reason that wasn't pleasant. I mean, there's very few divorces. Well, okay, we know we're done. I mean, there's some sort of conflict there. And the way that people dwell on it, I've always found, so I want to know what happened, or I want to know what the ex was, but do I really? Because once you learn more details and you start analyzing those details, it's not good going forward, because you're creating, I think, and I'll ask you, but it's a situation of constant comparison if you focus on that. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're definitely comparing, but I think more than comparing, you're setting yourself up as a victim.
Yes.
You are focusing on what happened to you instead of who you became and what
Mm-hmm.
you made of it. And to me, the most important thing is like, are you growing? Are you learning?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a growth mindset?
Yeah.
Because if you have a growth mindset, you're not looking at life as a bunch of terrible things that happened to you that you had no
Mm-hmm.
control over.
Right.
You know, we often think we're trapped in our life situations.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people come from really tough backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my clients, you know, I am just in awe of these women who come to me and men who come to me, mostly women, but it's just with backgrounds that are so challenging,
Mm-hmm.
with parenting that was just totally
Yeah.
discounting who they were as people.
Yeah.
And out of their whole family, they're the only ones who have gone on to really do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot to do that.
Yeah.
And so when you meet somebody who has done the work, who is willing to be open to tough conversations,
Mm-hmm.
to talking about hard things, you know,
Yeah.
all of these questions are not really the tough conversations, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
They're just tough questions that can be
Yeah.
annoying, and they don't really tell you anything when you answer them the way most people answer them. The
Right.
tough conversations are talking about sex and how do we have those conversations, and talking about preferences around things that trigger us.
Yeah.
Like, how do we talk about this is my thing, and I'm being really triggered right now because I had a lot of infidelity in my past. And
Yeah.
so when you talk to women on Facebook, it makes it really hard for me. I make up a story in my head that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
cheat on me. So
Yeah.
then we can be vulnerable and we can talk about hard things.
Yeah.
But these other questions are just like the, you know, how's online dating going? It's going, you know, and so it's, you know, and you can be cheeky in your responses. You can say, you know, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet you. You could say online dating is, I don't know, like people, how long have you been single? I've said to people much longer than I've been double. I don't know, like, like
Yeah.
you
Just
know,
yeah.
people just, what's the difference? How long? What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference to how long you've been on online dating? It doesn't matter. What are
Yeah.
you trying to parse out here?
Right.
So you don't have to entertain these questions with defensiveness or nasty responses. You can just give them a simple response and move on.
Yeah, and I think the we're starting to get to the end too, Sandy. Is what to remember is maybe to expect that. Just understand you're going to get uncomfortable questions. You're going to have tough questions, whether you ask them or you know somebody asks you, and it can make or break the way you go forward. You know, in a relationship that could be terrific. And I think the other thing, I'll say this and I'll throw it over to you to close, but it is to remember that, you know, we're all on some level broken or have had, you know, horrible experiences that could derail us from going forward. You know, I get a lot of comments that, oh, I don't want to get messed up. All these women out there are just, you know, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? All the men are too. We've all had life that we need to look at again. And like you said, I love that, reframing it to where
Yeah.
your story is still true, but it's not some tragedy. And I'll let you close.
Yeah, and what you bring up is really important. If you look at the world of dating as we're all in the same boat, we have more in common than we have that
Mm-hmm.
is separating us. And we
Right.
often look at people as the other. You know, I don't want to get involved with the other, with those people, because they're messed up and I'm
Yes.
perfect.
Right.
And even if you've done a lot of work on yourself, there's always more to do. And you are, you know, you're going to do much better if you approach this with compassion, with kindness, treat people the way you want to be treated. And so if you're assuming that they're asking questions just to annoy you, or they're looking for a response that you imagine they're looking for, and how
Mm-hmm.
could they, those are all assumptions in your head. And so get out of your
Right.
head, get
Mm-hmm.
into your heart, answer people with just enough, be prepared for these questions because they come up. And the more prepared you are, the better the whole dating experience is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandy, thank you again so much for your time. I always love having you on here and just appreciate your support of this channel. We will link to all of your information to your website. If you heard anything that resonates, give Sandy a call. She's wonderful to work with, and you know, who knows where it could take you in your dating life. So Thanks again, Sandy, and we'll see you again soon on Second Act TV. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and we'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.